Huh? Good morning. All right, let me check. I'm checking YouTube to make sure if I'm live streaming. Yeah, we're live. Well, we've been live for 8 seconds on YouTube.
Have we? Okay. Well, you need to come back to the tab because all I can see is a W on my screen.
What? All you can see is a W?
Yeah. I think it might mean that I don't know if it's me or there we go. Now
I think this is you.
I haven't touched anything. See, this is all part of the learning experience of teaching tangents, discovering new ways of using technology as old middle-aged Gen Xers.
Yes. So we've been changing just for anybody still watching and interested in these videos. About that. Sorry, the self-deprecation. I hate when people do self-deprecation and I'm doing it myself. And see, like I have a yellow thing saying my feed is not that great. And I have the fastest fiber I could possibly get in Paris. So, but it might be my computer.
I have a green thing saying I'm cool.
So I've been meaning to change for months. I've been procrastinating this.
You have.
To say that the only reason I'm paying for Zoom and they keep hiking their prices is basically for this conversation, and so as to have the functionality to go live on YouTube. And for anybody who's wondering, the reason why I'm not using OBS or anything like that right now is because my computer just can't stand it. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. I've tried to use OBS a bunch of times and or other streaming setups, and it's just my graphic card and my computer. I need new ones basically, and it's not even that old a computer. Anyway, long story short, I thought and I suspected and I knew that you could do it with Jitsi Meet, live stream on YouTube, and that it hopefully would work as a video conference and live streaming. So I thought we would try that, and that's what we're trying today. So there's a little bit of a lag. I mean, the video seems to be working fine in terms of the conversation for me now. How about you?
Yeah, it's fine too. And I quite like the layout of it. It feels like it was really easy. There's no kind of very low kind of setup. I didn't have to set up a login, all that kind of stuff. It worked really well.
Only one thing is on YouTube.
Yeah.
The video is not like we see the conversation right now.
Ooh, how is it? Is it speaker view?
It's just me.
Is it? Oh.
But well, you've got a thumbnail.
Okay. Hi.
Okay, so I don't know how to change that.
Here's my thumbnail. That's a bad joke.
I don't know how to change that. There was a bad joke. Yeah, it's on speaker view because I just saw your face for a second. It's on speaker view.
Okay, so then can you take it off speaker view? Click the four at the bottom. There's 4 squares, 3 buttons in from the right. Click on that.
No, but right now on my conversation, I'm not on speaker view.
When we're talking right now,
we should have done this before.
We should,
but
it doesn't matter.
But anyway,
who cares? At the bottom, 4 squares. I can see you. You can see me. That's speaker view.
I understand. That's how my conversation is set up right now. I don't know why it's not streaming that way.
Very odd. I do understand. Something's getting lost in translation to YouTube. YouTube sort it out.
So I'm trying to toggle it again. Well, it's either Jitsi or YouTube.
Let's blame YouTube.
Definition streaming. I toggled the view again. That said, I mean, maybe for the viewer, it's better to view the conversation on speaker view. Is it important to see? I mean, I don't know.
I think it's better when you have 2 people and you see the reaction. Who knows? But everyone likes things differently, right?
Yeah.
I want to see.
Okay, well, this is going to be another mystery. I hadn't thought about working that one out because, of course, I tested it, but I tested it only with myself in the conversation, not with you, which we, of course, should have. But this being the worst amateur show, I'm doing the self-deprecation again. No, not doing that. Sorry. Anyhow, hi, James. How are you?
I'm really well, and there's nothing wrong with self-deprecation when it's done sparingly.
Oh, I can do manage video quality. I'm in high quality video.
I'm in standard, and
I think he adapts automatically.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stream as well, and I can see I'm in the corner. It might be really important for us to not talk over each other. Who knows?
I think so, because I'm getting a little bit. I think I'm getting a little bit more lag than I do on Zoom. And again, I think it's down to my computer's graphic card or connection. I'm not entirely certain, but or maybe it's the tool that's less stable. But I think Jitsi is usually pretty stable.
Okay, well,
I played a role-playing game with friends yesterday, and we played on video via Discord, which usually I use Discord on audio, and it was very laggy. But I think it was also down to other people's computers. It was just not as fluid as Zoom, so we really had to be patient, and like it was just going very slow. And we were only 4 people.
A lot of my pupils use Discord.
Yeah, but Discord is better with the audio only than the video, I think.
Oh, okay.
Their video feature was only launched last year.
What's quite funny is that we would have Teams meetings during online learning at school, and we'd have all these pupils in there, not many videos. So we'd get like the year group in there, and we'd have a speaker come in. What I found out is they're on Teams. They haven't necessarily got their video on, but they're on a Discord chat between them, making fun of whatever I said or whatever someone else said or whatever else is happening.
I'm not surprised. I don't know how my students are doing it, but of course, I mean, I'm sure they have all sorts of different communication.
I thought it was hilarious, to be fair, but I don't know if many of the other teachers know that. So we'll see. Which actually,
of course they're not. I wouldn't use Of course, you're not going to use the tool provided to you, the official tool from the school of Microsoft. Makes no sense.
Well, Teams isn't that bad for teaching. I have to be honest.
I'm not a fan.
It's quite good.
I'm not a fan.
Just whatever tool is there, I'll use.
I mean, I make it work, but anyway, let's go on to the question because this is enough.
Well, it was actually quite a good segue to the question, to be fair.
Okay.
This talking about
our blabbering about with like our technical setup and pretending like we
blabbering
pretending
about
like this is valuable content.
Talking about the experiences of what young people do versus old people, talking about trying to teach online. So the question I have for you today, season 2, episode 18, the question is, what's been your biggest challenge as a teacher?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
And you've got 2 different perspectives here because you're kind of new. You're teaching at a different level to I am.
I'm new. I'm definitely new at it.
But I think there might be some similarities. But what do you think? What's your biggest challenge as a teacher?
So it's funny because I've just found the last few days challenging about being a teacher. I'm getting the reactions from my students to my grading their year-long personal research.
Right.
And this is where I've had a very personal relationship with them. I mean, I'm emotionally and personally involved in what's going on, and I've made myself very available and made myself very close, and so the students that don't have a good grade are coming to ask me questions. There's also a little bit of I don't know, kerfuffle is a bit of a strong word, but just not sure. I'm not clear if the administration. So the way that it worked is I had to fill in a form for the administration with my grades and my feedback, and then that would go. They would give that to the students whenever, and so I told all the students, like, you're going to get all your grades through them, not straight through me. So, but it seems like they had the number for their grades, but not the feedback at the same time.
Okay.
So I gave them a paragraph of feedback for each one, so they already have questions and the general. So the wider challenge has been included to that, and I've been feeling it. Like I'm having a hard time. It's difficult. It's difficult to be fair. It's because it's wholly extremely subjective work. It's difficult to to feel like I had one student message me yesterday and say that this grade might mean that I don't get my diploma. And you're like, it just feels my stomach is aching. And I want to be a nice person, but I also, and I believe I am being generally really generous with my grades. And if this wasn't a private school, and if I had more experience and wasn't taking this so personally, you wouldn't have that much access to having so much support, so much feedback as I've given. And still, it's still difficult to explain, like, well, I'm sorry, but the work just didn't work. It was not, I mean, I can give you the feedback, and somebody's disappointed and upset about it because they invested time and work into it. I'm like, well, yeah, I understand that you did, but it's just subpar. I'm sorry. There's judging, grading, the experience in general of being that figure of authority, and so in multiple levels. So there's the level of, it's the first time I'm doing it. There's the level of the relationship with the school, insofar as understanding and not being given a lot of, or if any, frame of like, this is how things are going to work. This is your frame of success, of measurement, of this is what average means. This is the process the students are going to go through. Regularly, the students are asking me questions and I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know, because I was not given the keys. So I'm like, we'll just go ask them, or I guess I'll go and find out, or like that. And also, so it's that I found really challenging. And it's not only challenging, it's really tedious to be grading as well. It's very tedious.
How many have you had to do?
Of those big ones?
Yeah.
29.
So 29 major year-long project reading things. How many pages each one, roughly?
50 to 80 pages.
Oh my God.
Well, so let me rephrase that. The requirement was for them to write a 24-page essay plus appendix. The appendices I had mostly read before because it was part of their preparation. There was like long pages. It was a qualitative research, interviews with professionals, all the bibliography, summaries of articles. There's a lot of stuff, which I didn't have to read in detail. I had mostly read it before. I could scan through that. And then their internship report, which was at least 10 pages. So for the most part, students wrote, their personal research was 25 to 30 pages for most of them. Which is, when I was saying that they call them memoirs in French, but they're not memoirs, because a memoir in France for university, because they're not in university, they're university level, but a communication school, private school. But a normal university, quote unquote, normal university, the memoir you write is usually around 150 pages. And would that be an experienced teacher, because I talked to a teacher friend who's a professor at university, told me that she takes about an hour to grade a memoir that is going to be 150 pages.
And is that?
But she's been doing that for years.
Is that a dissertation? Is that the same thing?
I don't know. What's a dissertation? Have you heard, I would say no. Yes, I've heard the word. We've used the word dissertation a lot in France, because all the work that we do in high school are dissertations.
Okay.
Not all the work, but most of the work. So I'm checking if we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. So I think
a dissertation usually is a long essay based on one phrase theme or something like that.
Yeah. So
to me, a dissertation is an essay, but I don't know. Maybe there's a difference for you.
Yeah, I think there's a difference. For me, when I was at uni, the dissertation was the big piece of work that you do at the end of your last year. That's your big research project thing about some topic that you chose. And it's the huge thing that comes at the end. That's what I mean by dissertation.
Yes, that's the memoir.
Okay. All right, cool. That's what I thought.
Because a dissertation in France is
it's general word for essay, right?
Yeah, general word for essay.
Yeah,
but the word essay exists in France as well, so I should check what the difference is.
Oh.
But from high school, we start doing dissertations. in philosophy and history and any topic. So, which are usually, in 2-3 hours, they're there a few pages.
Okay.
But they're not a year-long personal research project.
Right. Okay. I get the difference.
Anyhow, doesn't matter. And then I have a bunch of other stuff to grade that are much easier and shorter from the first and second year student exams that just finished, that I've been procrastinating all week, and I just finally started to do it yesterday.
Oh, you too, huh? Yeah, I've got 38 papers. I've done 19 of them.
Yeah, so those are the first. I started with the first year students. Yeah, no, the procrastination is strong. I have like 60 of them. I got to get them done, and I should have. I was supposed to get them done. Well, I wanted to get them done by Friday, and I had time. It's not that I didn't have time. It's just really that I procrastinated.
Like every other teacher. So you think the biggest challenge has been grading to a standard that allows that's correct, or grading to a standard or the effect of your decisions?
The effect of my decisions, and particularly the ones that were invested for the year long, are the biggest, most important ones. The other ones I'm less worried about. But still, it's not easy to do that. And I had and it's even just difficult to say that's the biggest one, because I had other challenges as a teacher. For example, just the amount of time. And I know this is an overdone and said, and we talked about it, but it's so true. It takes an enormous amount of time to be teaching. Mm-hmm. And I'm certainly putting way too much time, personal effort, perfectionism, or whatever else you want to call it, time into it. But it's also normal. I'm beginning. Well, on one hand, it's normal I'm beginning. On another hand, this is what I do. I tend to overthink things, and so I spend a lot of time on them. And I try to do them well. So I also invest time in how to do them well. And then by the end, whatever the class I prepared or the course I prepared, I'm still not satisfied with the level. And the funny thing is I show other people and they're like, no, this is a really, really high quality, high level thing that you're giving there. And I'm like, I have no frame of reference. I was given no frame of reference. So I'm going with my own standard.
Yep.
And I have no idea. It's entirely possible that the standard I'm demanding of the students I'm grading for those 29 exams is extremely high. But then nobody else told me, and they said you're responsible. So I'm like, okay, great. We're going to do it this way.
That's a lot. And
typically, I seem to think that I don't know if I'm right or not. I think I'm generous with my grades, and I think the kids the students are getting a lot of. They're not easy because I'm demanding, but I'm not taking it lightly, and it's really difficult to give under not a passing grade. So the ones for whom I did not give a passing grade, I didn't do it lightly. I really put a lot of I really, really seriously give myself standards for what that would mean. And unfortunately, one of the tough things about it is, unfortunately, and I've lived through that, and I keep thinking about my exam for the baccalaureate in philosophy, but the amount of time and effort you spent is only a marginal criteria in grading a piece of work like that at that level. You're at a master's student level. The fact that you spent a lot of time and effort, I have no doubt, but I can't give you just a passing grade because you spent a lot of time and effort. If it's not what was required.
Yeah. That's a familiar
If you're not meeting the requirement, and if you're off topic and you're not doing the work that was required and that we talked about, I have no doubt that you worked hard, and I'm sorry if it's disappointing. I get it, but it's not. I can't. I can't give you a passing grade because you worked hard. We're not in primary school anymore.
Yeah, this is a big thing. One of my repeated themes, certainly in my teaching, is both subjects I teach, business and psychology. The material isn't actually that difficult. If you spend time and you go through material, it's not that hard to understand. The challenge is using that material to answer a question, and actually answering the question in front of you is really important, not just splurging out everything that you know.
Yes.
And the amount of times, and I do hammer my students a lot, Like that's what the question. What's the question asking for? Get that clear before you even answer. And it's a common theme across other subjects. One of my colleagues is a history teacher, says ATFQ to his students. Answer the effing question.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. I spent all of my tutoring time with those students from September to December getting clear on their topic, and their topic is expressed as a question. So each one of their personal research, that's what I coached them on. I coached them on getting like in the spirit of the quote that is misattributed to Albert Einstein: "If I had an hour to save the world, or I would spend 55 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes on the solution."
Yeah.
That one, or that would have, so it's formulated something like that. But so that's what I spend time with them on, and that's what I do as a strategist. And so the topic of their personal research, I taught them, or at least that's where my aim was to teach them, but I had very little time to formulate the personal topic of research as a question presenting two opposing forces. And so your question is presented as a conundrum that you have to go study, that you're taking on to go study. So the question presents a problem. The problem is expressed as two, and I think we talked about this before, but as two areas that are seemingly opposed.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So do you want one from one of my students? But anyway, I can give you, so two opposing forces. How can okay, so here's one that I had prepared for them, if I can remember it correctly. I need to go check. I could go check the exact formulation, but it was in the world of indie video games, and the topic needs to be related to marketing communications because that's what they're studying.
Yep.
Marketing communications and management is the name of their grade, but it needs to be, you need to look at the problem that you want to look at through the lens of communication, marketing communication.
Okay, sure.
And you need to present something that it seems to be opposed forces. So how can independent video game studios garner the audience necessary in order to make a living when the big studios have all the money in marketing and all the attention?
Okay, cool.
So this is I think I had formulated it better in terms of the wording, but basically the two opposing forces, this is like you're talking, this theme is a David and Goliath thing. So
yeah,
I'm a small independent studio. I spent all my time producing the game. How do I get it out there on the market when the market is submerged by the big guys who have all the marketing money? And there you have two different actors in the same industry to discuss, who have very different challenges. There's a rich environment. It's a huge business. There's a big market to talk about when you talk about video games. There's a lot of people that love it. There's an enormous amount of opportunities to talk about a wide variety of marketing campaigns, a wide variety of different marketing strategies and methodologies and success stories. And that's also a thing that they had. These students had I tried to hammer it at home, but I also, and again, this is a challenge of framework because it's the first year I teach, and also I think a little bit because of the challenges of working remotely, not being there at the school. I had very little. And otherwise being busy elsewhere, I think too. And I had heard, I mean, they seem to be like the school is very open on how you manage things. I didn't know what else they were being taught in their other classes. Because, you have the title, but I don't know what the teacher's doing. So to be able to feed into this research project, there's a reliance on what they're being taught elsewhere for them to use in this personal research project.
Yep, that makes sense.
Or else there's no lens to look at for communications. And most of these students came from other bachelors. So they didn't study communications before. So they're smart kids, but they didn't necessarily have the keys and the codes for, or even the inclination to say, well, we're going to go look at a marketing strategy or a marketing campaign. And that's one thing that I had to explain to them, that you need to look at things from a communication perspective, meaning you need to look at, in the video game example, how is that video game sold? What have they used to communicate? What are the themes? What are they saying, doing? What are the images saying to influence and convince somebody to buy their product or to think well of it? And this is something that I've done for so long that it seems to come naturally to me, that it doesn't come naturally. But it also, as you said correctly, is something of a theme that joins studying overall and thinking about something. And I didn't know for a very long time what it meant to answer the question and to offer thinking, original thinking. And when that happens as well, that there's pages and pages of description, and I'm like, that's not thinking. You're basically copying and pasting stuff that I've seen from a methodology on 10,000 other blog websites. That is not explaining what the communication is. But explaining that is with no time of teaching. I didn't have any teaching time for them. This is all stuff that they should know already at that point.
So
not the communication stuff, but how do you write a piece of critical thinking?
So is it conceivable that someone could have done history and then is now doing the communication marketing?
This particular class are master students who all studied something else before deciding to do a master's in marketing communications.
Okay, because I keep thinking, how is it possible to get to do a master's without knowing how to construct an essay?
To do a bachelor's in this case.
Yeah. You can't. How can you get to... You can't have done a bachelor's without understanding, surely, how to construct an essay.
I would think yes.
Because I'm surprised.
I don't know.
Hear that.
Me too, but I don't know. Maybe I didn't explain or explain right what the... Anyway, I don't know.
But it's interesting. The way you think and the way you approach things is very much like a teacher does. There are some things that you're saying that are very familiar to me as a teacher. Like,
well, at least that's reassuring to me because that's reassuring to me.
so there's a couple of things you said that just I totally identified. One is the wanting to get it right and perfect. And at some point in my career, I realized it's never going to be perfect every single time. And to strive for 100% perfection, I'm going to explode. So,
and I'm already thinking that I understand as well very fast that at some point, I'm already getting there. If I keep teaching, I'm going to get blasé about things like that very fast. Yeah. And just sometimes walk into the classroom and go, it doesn't make any difference anyway. I'm just going to pull on what I can remember and show them a couple of videos and talk about it without preparing anything. I'm exaggerating. But not
I wouldn't. I have done that, but it's very, very, very rare. I have a framework that I've set up that I use and call on. But the other thing that you said that I thought was really interesting is the almost like lesson number one as a teacher. Don't take anything personally. Like it's so hard not to.
Yeah,
it's so difficult. So
it's funny because a lot of people have been challenged during this year pandemic.
Yeah,
with their separation between work and private life.
Yeah,
and I have a very porous, by choice design, etc. already because I was already working from home because I'm a freelancer so there's like very little difference between the two. I actually just purposely way before years ago already went in that direction. And I think I have a pretty good, we talk about knowledge of ourselves and we talk about, so I'm pretty knowledgeable about myself. Of course, there's always new things to learn. I'm pretty comfortable with myself overall. I think I'm quite solid in the way that I operate enough to be able to say and to pour in some personal involvement into the things that I do. But but it is there. It has its limits, and well, I don't know. It's had its limits. It's not exactly what I mean to say, but yeah, it's just an exercise to notice, but it's offering and opening myself to potential, emotions.
As a teacher, you give of yourself when you teach. It's impossible not to. Whatever you're communicating, whatever I'm communicating as a teacher in the classroom is my take on the syllabus, and then I'm putting it across to them and allowing them to discover whatever it is. And it's taking things personally is inevitable. We're human beings. No person is an island. And I think knowing yourself, and one of the things that teacher training, certainly in the UK, we talk about is reflecting, being a reflective practitioner, reflecting on your own lesson so that you can improve it next time, and discussing it with someone. And then so you can see, okay, maybe I could try that. It's a never ending. And it's one of the things I like about teaching is it's a never ending exploration and discovery of who you are in the context of a subject.
Yeah. So, and here's another interesting one. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend on a slightly different but related topic. So it'd be interesting to have your take on that one, because I think it's relevant. It's exactly what we're talking about. And we were talking about coaching, and same on teaching. He teaches a few classes as well, but so he has a very strong separation between work and personal. Like very unlike me, completely not like me. And he has strong, like, I tend to be very, I was going to say morally flexible, but his wife said it very well. I'm a pragmatic. I think from a very Anglo-Saxon perspective, things are relative. Things are relative to context. And he is very coming from a very traditionally French perspective. That he's very what's the opposite of pragmatic? He's
intellectual. Overthink.
No, it's
philosophical.
No, the opposite of pragmatism is from a philosophical current, and the thinking current is it's not metaphysical. It'll come back to me anyway. Anyway, he's like, the things are like this. Absolute.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the word I was looking for, but he is very absolute like that.
Okay.
And he's like, very sharp. No, they don't have the level. And he's, or at least he says it like that. I don't know if it's always the case, but says it very harsh. And we were talking about coaching, and I think coaching and teaching in the regard I'm about to talk about is very similar, or at least there's a lot of parallels to be made, I think. And I was going to talk with you later about this, but anyway, it matches, I think. And I was talking about holding people to account, making promises, and I thought it was semantic, his point, which I didn't disagree with, but I was like, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be like a mental gymnastic that I don't really think is worthwhile. But he was saying that, well, no, when you don't make promises to a coach, and the coach is not there to hold you to account. Which I was like, okay. He was like, you make them to yourself, and he is with you. I'm like, okay, but so similarly as a teacher, on one hand, I know it shouldn't be taking care of things. It's not personal that one of my students doesn't have a passing grade. But I also take this as it's my responsibility for them to. And now it is their responsibility to get the passing grade. It's not for me to do it. But I have bear responsibility because I want them to be successful in what they're doing, and I want them to learn what it is that I'm teaching. Yeah. And this was a specific one for that class of the personal research. I wasn't their teacher. I was their tutor. I had very limited windows of time to be able to. Anyway, that doesn't matter. This is by the by. But my goal is for them to go full on and to do that research the best way they could, and to have the best grade possible. And so the student who didn't have a passing grade, I do take as now it's not my personal failure, but I think it's a failure of my teaching. I don't know how to phrase this right, but it's not that I'm at fault for this. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, I think something that's been useful for me is that this difference between who are the senior managers going to go to if there's a so I'm in my school, I'm head of psychology. Who are the senior managers going to go to? Who are the parents going to go to if there's a problem with psychology? They're going to come to me.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily going to, they might go to the other psychology teacher, but ultimately they're going to come to me. I have that position. I have that accountability. So as much as the learning that has to happen, the students are responsible. What happens in the class, how it's delivered, the way we choose to deliver the topics we do, ultimately is down to me. The results that we get, the number of passing grades, is down to me. I'm accountable for that. So I think the way I like to think of it is the difference between being who's accountable, who do you go to, who's in charge, versus ultimately who's going to be taking the action, who's responsible. That's helped me separate the two. So I suppose the question is for you, like, ultimately, who's going to have a conversation with you about how many people got what grade? Is that even going to happen?
I don't know that that's going to happen, aside from having it with myself.
Wow.
I don't know, actually, because I don't know.
Because if there is,
I believe I'm accountable for the grades I'm giving. Now I know there's a person in charge of the fourth year students in that class by extension. But this is from a framework perspective and infrastructure. I don't even know how that works. That's part of the questions I sent an email out to ask a few questions on. Wait a minute, exactly. Because, for example, that one student said they may not have their degree, which I raised my eyebrow because I was like, well, I think your averages are right. So wait a minute, I might not understand how you get your degree. And this is not directed to that particular student. It is because I was like, well, wait a minute, I don't understand how this works.
Yeah, because you're one tiny bit in a whole.
Well, I think it's an important bit, but it's not the whole bit.
Yeah.
And their degree. I'm not the grades I'm giving for this particular project. I do not think, unless I'm wrong, and maybe I am. Maybe they do decide the whole degree. But then why do they have their other topics? But I don't know the answer to that question. I sent an email to ask how that works because I don't know. It doesn't say on the websites of the school.
It's really I think it's really useful to know.
That's the by the by topic. I think the question of responsibility and accountability is very interesting. However,
and I think
on accountability, it was part of my job to hold the students to account for their dates and everything else.
Yeah.
And I also make a certain number of choices on how that works. So the school asked me to hold them to account to fill in the absence sheets, late sheets, attendance sheets, because there's legal requirements for that.
Yep.
So I do it reluctantly, but because I'm like, well, you're old, so you do whatever you want. I don't have any, but I don't chase them, and I will not. I probably will chase some dates and find out what's going on in terms of deliverables. Like if I ask you to give a deliverable on that date, it should be there. But I'm not a schedule cop. I'm not, that's not my job. So ultimately I am, but I'm not going to worry about that particular type of accountability when my students are 22 and they should know all those things.
Yeah, I have to be
similarly for if you don't understand how to write a dissertation and put some critical thinking together and understand the difference between giving me pages of description versus answering a question with an original piece of thinking, and the original piece of thinking doesn't have to take pages. For the most part, the grades I'm giving for those personal research that are 30 pages long, the key points that make points are not the ones that take 4 pages to explain at all.
Yep.
There's a lot of padding in there.
Yeah.
I didn't give a passing grade to those who had the longest things at all.
Yeah. That's certainly a common theme. If I write loads, that means I'm doing something good.
Yes, and there's a very French thing on that because there's a lot of quantity asked for, the number of pages, which I have. That's part of I have a lot of peeves about the French system, which is not convenient because I'm back in France and I should get back into the French system and language. But when I moved in, when I started working in English, and I found out most writing requirements and school requirements are a number of words. At first, I didn't really understand because I was always taught to do things in number of pages.
Okay.
But then I thought, well, actually, it makes a lot more sense to count the words, because pages are arbitrary. Pages depend. If you're writing script, it depends on your writing. It depends. And it's not a gauge of quality to write 8 pages. It's not a gauge of quality at all. And we've been trained in France from high school to write a number of pages. And so the first place I went, and most students go unless they're taught otherwise by their parents most of the time, and the parents need to know that, which is like, again, socioeconomic questions, is to write drivel. Because you're like, well, what am I going to say for 8 pages? So you write a lot of nonsense. Nobody taught me to write a very short, sharp argument of like with a point. I learned that later in life.
Me too. I learned that from my very first amazing mentor about writing very cleanly.
Yeah, which is also something that it was difficult to grade at first, and that's why I didn't take it lightly. I read everything, went over it twice. I put a third document with, like, I ordered all the students in the class to compare one copy to another.
Yep.
Because those are difficult. And I read an article about there's some controversy in the news at the moment for the French in the French baccalaureate this year for the philosophy exam.
Okay.
They tried to change something in the way the philosophy exam is graded by teachers all around France because it happens all at the same time. I think they forced. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're forcing an electronic system on the grading of the exam, and with a very set time. And one of the points that some teachers were making against that idea was not. They were like, "Well, we understand." So was the fact that so they have to go through a lot of different copies very fast. And it's all extremely subjective.
Yeah.
So while there are codes and they have the same topic for all of the exams around France, so you're supposed to regurgitate some specific examples and some ideas. It's not like wildly off topic, but it's still subjective. How much you grade and whether it's worth one. It's not math. Just like I'm not grading math. It's not like 2 + 2 = 5, 0 point = 4, 1 point. You're like, that's clear. It's still open to interpretation whether something is worth more or less points. So for all of those types of works, you go in and with your batch, you try to balance out what you got.
Yep.
Right? Which is also what I've done. So just trying to, at the level of the class that I have with the 29 different exams that are all the 29 students that I followed, that of course are at different levels, different perspectives, different topics, different everything, but to try to organize out, okay, well, what's going to justify a passing grade, a great grade, a subpar grade?
This you've managed to articulate one of the biggest challenges in teaching just there. It is, and sometimes my students every year, somebody says at least 2 or 3 times, different students will tell me in class that I'm being judgmental, and I will say, yes, it's my job to be judgmental. I'm making judgments based on the work that you give me. It's my job. And they don't like it. They don't like knowing that I'm making a judgment of their work, of them almost, based on what I think. I'm like, but that's it. That's the game we're in. Do these things in this way and you'll most likely get this grade. And it's what teaching is.
And it's funny what I described again, and I think because I think that way is automatically the way that I would say that. It's again what I described is a relative pragmatic perspective.
Yeah.
Because for me, there can't be an absolute on this type of work.
Yeah.
Now, somebody who does approach things from a like sharp black or white absolute perspective might come at it differently and say, well, you didn't apply the rule of 1, 2, 3, whatever the rule is. But then maybe that person would have given it that way. Would have said, you need to do this, but I don't do this. One, because I didn't really have the time to teach them like this. And in master's degree, they should know already how to present that kind of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I don't think there's only one way to do it. I really strongly believe that there's a lot of different ways to approach what thinking is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a difficult one but what is clear is when there's no thinking, I can see it.
Mm.
I will see that there's no thinking. Effort and thinking is not the same thing. And what I want to see is thinking. I want to see thinking. And it's difficult to describe. And I was berated for the same reasons when I was young in my first job on the value and how to think. And I'm still learning how to think.
Yeah.
But I've gone a long way. And so like what was eating me up sometimes was like, okay, well, am I applying my level of expectation to these students? And I don't think I am, because otherwise, no, I don't think I am. And then the best way to go look at that is to look how they're responding amongst themselves and to look at all the different perspectives, their copies, which is where I'm like, okay, I'm getting something from them, because if I judge it by myself, it's too difficult.
You're making another really good point about the seeing, when there's no thinking, and it's difficult to communicate what thinking is, and it's difficult. The other thing I really liked about what you said is there's no set way. There's multiple ways of putting across thinking. This is something that I find really hard, because a lot of my students want me to tell them the formula for how to write an essay. And I'm saying, I'm not going to tell you a formula. I can give you some basic principles. Now, I'm a big fan of understanding basic principles. That's just the way I like to think. If you understand the basic principles, then you can take it in whichever direction you want. Other teachers that I work with will tell their students, this is how you write an essay. This is the way you get the marks. And then the students follow that and then get a mark. And I think that is limiting. I think that takes the fun out of exploration, of thinking, of discovery in a subject and of learning.
And I think particularly, the people who, and this is difficult, but that's the approach I'm taking. And that's like what I've started all my classes, is to explain and say, like, I want you to learn how to think. Because I think that if you have that one way or another, you'll be better suited to dealing with life in general, whatever situation comes up, than learning something by rote and repeating it, because the life won't look like the thing that you're learning in class. Life won't look like the way that and what you described is probably the absolutist perspective on saying, well, these are the rules of dissertation, do 1, 2, 3, and follow it, and I'll grade accordingly. And it's not that way is wrong, but if you think that's how life works, it's not.
Yeah.
That way of writing a dissertation won't help you in your job interview.
You've managed to articulate something that I've been struggling to explain. And I totally agree with you. And I'm glad you said it's not wrong to have that structure. But certainly the challenge that I'm finding at the moment is I've got students who are telling me they don't like the way I teach because they just want to know what they need to know. Tell us what we need to know.
And everybody functions differently. So the two of us seem to be more on where we're agreeing with each other. Some other teacher, like you described, and like the friend I described, would probably go a different way. And so some students learn better on freeform and better on structured. And I said job interview, but it really depends. There are businesses that operate in a very free form where you get to do everything and it seems a bit chaotic, and some that are more ordered. The more ordered tend to be larger, big corporations, civil service, not always. And the other side tends to be more smaller businesses, startups, tend to, because again, not always like that. But
having said that
you'll discover when you start working. And I say working because, well, ultimately the idea is you finish your studies and you go, you can upgrade to go work and then die. But,
Having said that, though, I think part of the reason I've become like that in my teaching is because I don't want to. Well, I think there's two reasons. The first one is life is chaotic, and trying to say that. I certainly know that some of my students will try and apply that way of thinking to whatever they do next. It's kind of natural. It's what the school system does. Yeah. And then they find that it all falls apart because life is messy. And then the other thing that informs the way I teach is that process of grappling with something, that process of struggling and trying to understand and figure out how it fits and how ideas relate and how to write it down is where most of the learning happens.
Yeah.
And when I say stuff like that, I've got a few students who are like, they hate it. They absolutely hate it.
But because it's one of the things that demands and the most effort is to think. We hate it. I hate it. And I think I'm not bad at it, but I'm really lazy compared to others. And most human beings are extremely lazy to think. It takes a lot of effort. Our brain is the organ that demands the most energy that doesn't work, like which we talked about system 1 and system 2 a lot. System 2 doesn't want to work. It just takes too much effort.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. And
it's much easier to turn Netflix on. It's much easier so because when you're repeating the structure that the teacher gave you, you don't need to think. You just need to repeat.
Yeah.
Monkey see, monkey do. Now, we learn by imitation and repetition, so we need to have some kind of structure. And that's another big challenge for me as a teacher, which we could have talked about for another hour. We could do that next time, is the challenge of putting the format of what I'm teaching together, particularly in like, what is it I'm trying to get to? What should they have known? What should they know by the end of the 15 hours I have with them?
Oh,
and I have 15 hours per semester. It goes fast. 15 hours is not a lot.
So there's something else that I found has really helped me because I'm head of psychology. My line it's become a line with the pupils is that whatever I say goes. When it comes to psychology, whatever is happening in the subject, you do not listen to anyone else, no other teachers, nobody, me. And that has provided some amount of clarity for the students. So on the one hand, they come and ask me questions, and sometimes I'll give a direct answer. Other times I'll say, I'm not going to tell you, or I don't know. Who knows? And then I get very facetious and I'll say, this might be our last lesson together. Who knows what's going to happen next year? So because I want them to think. And it is how do you providing the framework for them within which they can think is part of my job, I think, as a teacher. But then you're at an even deeper level where I have a syllabus. At least I have a qualification that I know. You are the syllabus. You're just like whatever. That's a whole other world of challenge that is. I'm glad I don't have to think about that.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time on it. So, and it's still nowhere near what I think it should be. And I don't know what else. And I can't tell them you're the only one, I'm the only one you listen to, because they have like all correlated other topics that they're learning that are all within the same field. And I have no idea how much or how little the other teachers are insisting on thinking for them. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with them.
How much of that do you think is because of online learning, pandemic, learning from home?
Which part?
So the experience that you've had of not knowing what other teachers are doing, and you being
I suspect nothing.
Okay.
Or not nothing, but I'm basing this on, I only had a few weeks of teaching in person, really, in September or early October. And so it doesn't say for the whole year. I think if we were teaching in person, so anyway, all that to say, I went in to the facility where there's classes, showed up at the class where I'm teaching, taught, and left.
Wow.
So I mean, maybe because I met maybe walking in and out would have given me more opportunities to serendipitously meet the person who introduced me to the school, who could have introduced me to other people, have the opportunity to say hi or talk in person to some of the people I've interacted with via email, leading to other conversations. Maybe there could have been a teachers meeting on site in person that I'd been invited to, but those are all like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think
like we talked about the teachers' break room last time. I don't even know there's a teachers' break room in that school where I'm teaching. And I'm not part of the permanent teachers. So unless I'm invited in to say, here's the system and here, this is how it works. And nobody did that for me. And I don't think that's a thing.
Teaching is definitely collaborative, more collaborative than people realize. And it's ideas driven, in my opinion. So to have that experience of being like you're doing your own thing by yourself is very challenging. Very challenging. To have no frame of reference of where you fit in, I wouldn't be able to tolerate that level of like.
I found it very challenging as well. I didn't pick it as my main, although it's part of the main challenge, which has made it more difficult to grade, etc. But I think it's the school itself, the fact that I'm not a full-time employee, so I'm not part of a team that I'm collaborating with on the curriculum, on anything else. I think the fact that it's a specific private school, the fact that I don't know, I'm making all this up, that it doesn't have set syllabuses for their classes, and all those reasons I think contribute. Maybe it's just maybe it's a French thing as well. I don't know. But I have no doubt that in the high school, where you are in France, of course, all the colleagues the teachers are colleagues, and they know each other, and they go to the same place, and they work together. Same thing for the faculty of a university. But this is different where I am, and probably for the teachers that know one another and that have been working there, that work there full time, it's different for them, and they probably had a lot of impact. I'm guessing here, I don't know. They probably had a significant amount of impact on their collaboration with one another from working remotely. But for me, it didn't change anything. So, and it's difficult to say otherwise if it would have changed much, because it was my first year teaching anyway. So I don't know.
It's a whole range of challenges that I think you've definitely experienced the deep end of becoming a teacher, lecturer. It's unbelievable. It's not unbelievable, but I think you've coped amazingly.
Thank you. Because this is another thing I don't realize how much effort and work that's been. I spent a lot of time on it. It's very gratifying for the students and etc. But it just doesn't work from a financial perspective.
Oh, you mean
insofar as like the amount of time I spend versus how much I'm being paid, and that I'm not being paid enough, and that really since September, it is technically only part-time, but I've been teaching more than my regular other job.
Yeah, this is another big challenge of teaching, and we've talked about it before, I'm sure. But
and that's not because of the teaching. This is just like me thinking that I should be doing more of my regular job with regular clients, quote unquote, than at teaching. But teaching is the only kind of job that's coming in at the moment. Not the only one, but
having said that, though, teaching is definitely one of those jobs that can just gradually take over your entire life.
Huge scope creep.
I don't think there are many other careers like that, because you almost become public property as well. When I've been out with my wife, like random person going, "Hey sir, hi," and then I've got used to it, and so's Davina. But like, I love embarrassing people when I see them. But you realise, like, I'm going on a school trip tomorrow to Brighton. But as great as it is to go to Brighton, I'm on a trip. I'm working. Anything can happen with a bunch of teenagers on a trip. You know, and these are older, so it's easier. Like they're 17, whatever. But you know, I'm still working, so it can take unless I have walls between my job and what I like to do. It's very easy for it to take over the world, and that's a very big challenge as a teacher. So, and hearing you say about the world of freelancer, where you're already like work life, it's like one big huge thing. You've dealt with it. You're dealing with it. Keep going. It's worth it. And it's also nice to hear how gratifying you see it is when they produce something that's cool. Those moments do make it worth it.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a good way to end it.
Yeah. Thank you as ever.
Thank you. All right.